14th Amendment was the amendment that gave former slaves citizenship. And therefore, and that was 150 years ago. That was an important amendment, and it is it's the amendment that so much of our today's civil rights legislation is pegged to. Therefore, it is probably one of the most important amendments for those of us involved in civil rights.
It's a very long time. Much has happened. Talk about since that amendment passed, what changed. Obviously citizenship, but kind of talk about some of those details of why it's as important today as it was 150 years ago.
Well, first of all, the 14th Amendment overturned the Dred Scott decision, which stated that African Americans were not citizens and did not enjoy the same liberties as other citizens enjoy. Overturned that. And then if you look at 1954 Supreme Court decision on school desegregation, you look at some of the legislation now that is going on in Congress regarding voter suppression. All of those are tied to the 14th Amendment. And therefore, it is as important today as it was in 1868 when it was passed.
What work needs to be done now? That's another obvious question, but when you talk today, what work needs to be done now? What
we're going to try to outline that. The theme of the 2068 National Convention for the NAACP will be defeat hate, vote. You look at what is going on today, defeat conservative takeover of the Supreme Court, vote. You look at what's going on in Washington with the zero policy on immigration, vote, if you want to defeat that. To defeat what's going on in Kentucky, the removal of 500,000 citizens from the Medicaid roll, vote. The takeover of Jefferson County Public Schools, vote. So voting is the theme that we want to kick off today. The importance of the vote, the importance of the 14th Amendment, and what we're going to do with about 30-some organizations who have joined us, and we're still open for more to join us.
So register to vote,
Vote.
go and vote.
Yes. And get involved. We've never faced situations from the African American community as we're facing today. Supreme Court, the possibility that it will swing and permanently be to the right for the next 40 or 50 years. Those are major challenges, and it is all pegged to the vote.
Do you think the 14th Amendment is under attack now that they've kind of doing some things? They had the Civil Rights Act lost a court decision a couple of years ago. You think this is next?
Well, look at voter suppression laws that are being enacted across the states, the several states. You look at your senior United States Senator in his attempts to roll back everything that the Obama administration stood for. Yes, it's under attack. You look at the current president and his attempts to roll back. Civil rights, civil liberties are definitely under attack. Thank you. Good afternoon. And let me thank those of you who have come to participate with us, especially the media, for coming to be with us this afternoon as we observe the 150th anniversary of the passage or the ratification of the 14th Amendment. It was 150 years ago that the 14th Amendment gave citizenship to those who had been enslaved, which gives us every reason to celebrate and observe. I think it is very important that this is one of the occasions that has not gotten a lot of publicity. And maybe that's our fault because we have not generated the publicity until today. But in Louisville, the NAACP, along with our partner organizations, want to, and we will, and we are observing and paying tribute to the 14th Amendment. I think it's important that we understand the significance of the 14th Amendment. And we're very fortunate to have with us our General Counsel for the State Conference NAACP, the Louisville Branch NAACP, and twice President of Kentucky State University, Mr. Raymond M. Burks. Mr. Burks.
We're here to in fact celebrate and also to pay special recognition to this event marking the 150th anniversary of the ratification of the 14th Amendment. 150 years ago today, this country decided to right some moral wrongs, and I do mean moral wrongs, which a civil war fought with deadly losses had not changed. In the words of the late, great, erudite legal scholar, legal strategist, legal practitioner, and Supreme Court Justice, the Honorable Thurgood Marshall, and I quote him, in which he said, "While the Union survived the Civil War, the Constitution did not. In its place arose a new, more promising basis for justice and equality, the 14th Amendment, guaranteeing equal protection of the laws." On July 9, 1868, these United States of America sought to eradicate the moral indignation and the continuing vestiges of the despicable and infamous practices of slavery in which people of color, human beings, were subjected to unspeakable maltreatment and not considered fully equal. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution was adopted by Congress on June 13, 1866, and ratified by state legislatures in 3/4 of the several states by July 9, 1868, and for your own reference, was only ratified by the Commonwealth of Kentucky in 1976. The amendment served as the foundation of change for the newly freed slaves and continues to this day to protect, through great struggles and attempts to read it out of the Constitution, the rights and privileges of those, not only those who are the heirs of the past injustices, but all U.S. citizens. The 14th Amendment abrogated the Supreme Court's opinion in Dred Scott versus Sanford, which held that all Americans of African descent, free or slave, were without either the natural rights or the political rights enjoyed by U.S. citizens. It also eviscerated the 3/5 compromise provision found in Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. People like me, under the 14th Amendment, became a full and a free people, citizens included in the Constitution, no longer excluded. The amendment granted full citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. It also prohibited states from making or enforcing laws that abridge the privileges or immunities of U.S. citizens, and commanded that states shall neither deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person equal protection of the law. The amendment gave to Congress the power to enforce the civil rights afforded to all Americans in the Constitution for the first time, including then former slaves. It made sure that the states guaranteed all people born or naturalized in the U.S. the rights provided in the Bill of Rights. The 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment is foundational to all rights enjoyed by every American, and I do mean every American. It changed the Constitution from a document which allows slavery into a guiding light for freedom, democracy, and equality. The amendment is a legal basis for countless Supreme Court decisions protecting civil rights, and among some of them is the right to vote, the right to equal education, the right not to be discriminated against in employment, the right to equal and fair housing, the right to equal pay, the right to marry the person of your choice, the right of a woman's choice over her body. The 14th Amendment is the most litigated provision in the Constitution and in American history. And recent examples of that litigation include the Voting Rights Act, in which the pre-clearance provision for changes in voting laws in states, districts, and county, with a demonstrated history and record of voter suppression, intimidation, and discrimination was stricken. The allowance of voting to proceed this year in states where trial courts had found discriminatory purposes, intent, and impact, and laws drawn with precision to curtail or suppress the vote of certain people who often look like me. And the allowance of the systematic purging of voter rolls for a variety of reasons, none of them related to the death of the voter. So today, we recognize the 150th anniversary of the ratification of the 14th Amendment. We recognize this landmark in time. African American citizens and others who are devoted to the principle of liberty and equality mark this 150th anniversary. The 14th Amendment's ratification on July 9, 2018 has very special meaning as it sets forth those indelible rights that were obtained by the struggles of so many who were trying to make this a better America by making it a more inclusive nation. We commemorate this date by engaging in civic engagement and programs to educate the public and reaffirm the original intent and purpose of the 14th Amendment, including the provisions regarding birthright citizenship and equality before the law. So today we pause in recognition of the 150th anniversary of the ratification of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. In your presentation, you emphasized the vote. Today, we come to announce a list of organizations that are joining in with us to register, to get out the vote, and other issues that may involve social justice. The theme for this year's NAACP National Convention, which will start Saturday in San Antonio, Texas, is Defeat Hate, Vote. And as we consider what is going on and taking place in our local community, in our state, and in our nation, we need to take under consideration the importance of the vote. Whether it's at the state level, when the governor has proposed the removal of over 500,000 citizens from Medicaid, we need to defeat that by voting. As you look at the proposed takeover of JCPS. Defeat that vote. As you consider what's going on in the nation with the proposed the proposed packing of the U.S. Supreme Court with conservatives who will affect decisions for the next 50 years. We need to defeat that. We need to vote. When you look at the policy of zero tolerance in immigration, we need to defeat that. We need to vote. And when you look at voter suppression efforts across the many states, we need to defeat those. We need to vote. So therefore, we chose this day to announce the kickoff of voter registration with our partners. This year, the National NAACP office has been engaged in securing partnerships to mobilize voters of color to increase voter turnout. At the local level, we have also been securing partners who will assist us in our civic engagement, not assist, but who will become equal partners in civic engagement activities. Those organizations are, and if there are representatives here, just stand. A. Philip Randolph Institute. They in the back. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. Then the AME Zion Church of Kentucky, of Louisville. Black Nurses Association. Central District Baptist Association. Coalition of Labor Union Women, CLUE. There they are. Community Conversations Group. Community Conversations Group. I'm sorry, Connections, I'm sorry. There they are, I apologize. Delta Sigma Theta. Empower West. Glasby. Greater Louisville. Geneva. Thank you. Interdenominational Ministerial Coalition. Iota Phi Theta Fraternity. Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. Louisville chapter of the National Hookup of Black Women. That is the husband of the, oh, there they are back there, thank you. The Louisville Defender. There's Bud over there. Louisville section of the National Council of Negro Women. Louisville Urban League. Mumford Park Marines. There they are. The Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge. There's Brother Hearn back there. NAMVETS. Mr. Stoller over there, thank you. Newburgh Ministerial Association. And I call the wrong name, I apologize. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Thank you. Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. In the back. St. Stephen Church. Thank you. The Links. The Links Incorporated. She don't want to stand. The Tuskegee Airmen. Urban League Guild. Urban League Young Professionals. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority. Thank you. These are the, yes ma'am.
Could you add the Kentucky Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression to your list?
I will, because the list is not closed. This is just the beginning. League of Women Voters. Wait a minute. Just a second. I'm a slow writer. If you can see, it was Alliance. Okay. Park Duval Community Health Center. AAI. AAI.
Metropolitan Louisville Women's Political Conference, nonprofit.
I'm not concerned if it's non-profit, it's a nonpartisan.
It's nonprofit.
Okay.
Nonprofit.
All of these organizations are nonpartisan. There were some who wanted to join us, and they can join us as individuals. Ms. Guerin?
Metropolitan Housing Coalition.
Metropolitan Housing Coalition. Ms. Hinko? You Metropolitan Housing? Yes, ma'am. Great. Did I overlook someone? Thank you. As you can see, I think that the community is ready for a massive voter registration drive. And we look forward to reporting back at the end of the drive our success rate. But as we know, it's not only important to register, but the more important aspect is to get folks out to vote. And that we must do. Education has been one of the primary missions of the NAACP. Has been and will be. Back in May, the Louisville Board of Education passed or enacted a racial equity policy. First time in the history that had been done. Dr. Marshall approached and asked if the NAACP would host at our regular meeting a session on the racial equity policy. Realizing that we were going to make this announcement today and get other organizations involved, we suggested that the session not only be for the NAACP, but would be with all of our partners in a setting that will allow the community to grasp and understand what the equity policy is and to give input into the policy. Now, one thing we know, that policies can be enacted and can be ignored. The education of our children is so important that we cannot allow that to happen. And I'm also proud to announce that on Thursday, what time, Ms. Wallace?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. at First Gethsemane Baptist Church, the Louisville branch NAACP will present $26,000 in scholarships to deserving young people. And in keeping with our policy on education, we asked Ms. Delquan Dorsey to participate with us to explain a little bit about what JCPS has planned for a special session with you and your organizations on August the 6th. Okay. So at this point, we'd like to ask Mr. Delquan Dorsey from JCPS to please come forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right. First off, bring you greetings on behalf of Superintendent Dr. Marty Polio, as well as my boss, Chief Equity Officer, Dr. John Marshall. I want to thank the NAACP, President Cunningham, and all the leadership for everything you do. And let me just highlight that for a minute, because this partnership is definitely not new. NAACP has been there since day one, and here recently has been very pivotal in having an impact, making sure the community stays engaged. One of those ways it came as a result of working with the NAACP to have a West Louisville satellite office. Now that office sits right in California Community Center on 1600 St. Catherine Street, and we're doing programs out of there. Matter of fact, we have a parent camp going on this evening. But all last year and times before, not only did we partner with the NAACP, but each JCPS chief had to go before the NAACP branch and talk about where their work was as far as equity, and making sure that we are held accountable to the public, and making sure that we do what we can to address the achievement gap. As Mr. Cunningham said, back in May, we passed a racial equity policy. And that policy consists of looking at disparities in academics, discipline, as well as hiring, access to programming, and curriculum. So those will be the things that this racial equity policy will cover. But just like Mr. Cunningham said, policies can sit on the shelf. But we are here celebrating the 14th Amendment, another policy. And though we come a long way, we still have so far to go. And we must stay engaged. We need you engaged. So actually next week, July 19th, we will have the kickoff for this racial equity policy right down the street at Central High School, 6 p.m. next Thursday. We would love for all of you all to be out and come and hear about what we're doing. It's not only district plans, but we'll be talking about the school plans as well. In addition to that, there will be an advisory council made up of members from the community that will advise the superintendent as well as the board on issues when it comes to race. And so if you can't make it out to July 19th, then please come out August the 6th. We will be at Maupin Elementary, right across the street from the branch on Catawba Street. And we need you engaged. Remember, it's Jefferson County Public Schools, okay? Not private schools. The P stands for public. And so we are only as successful as you hold us accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for coming to be with us. Good evening.